The current Ukraine versus Russia fight that is going on since almost last 2 years, that is only because of United States intervention in the European politics. When you have a friend like United States, who needs an enemy? And that is precisely why Ukraine is suffering. Yes, Ukraine is suffering. It is being devastated by the bombings carried out by Russian forces. And all of this only because Ukraine wanted to be a member of NATO-led alliance. Russia has been opposing this since 1990s. It was in the 90s when United States promised to the then Russian President Gorbachev in 1990 precisely that if Russia agrees to the Western alignment of the then East Germany, then USA will provide an ironclad promise that NATO will not make any advancements toward the eastern border. And that was a promise made by USA, which was broken by USA. And then Gorbachev agreed to that promise on the premise that Russia would agree to military force of Western forces in the East Germany in lieu that NATO will not do any eastward expansion. There are records which prove that US diplomats said that NATO will not expand an inch eastward. It is well documented. You can actually read this article which was published in Los Angeles Times, and you can go through it yourself. But that promise was broken. Soon after Russia broke up, USSR broke up in 1991. 8 years after that, in 1999, NATO expanded, and it brought into its own fold Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. Russia protested, but it couldn't do anything more than mere protestation because it was not in a position to do anything more than that. Then again, NATO expanded in 2004. It added 7 or 8 more countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, and so on. Russia protested at that time as well in 2004 that it does not want NATO to expand. It does not want any Western forces on its border. No NATO missiles on its border, but no one listened to it then. And then in 2008, Georgia said that it wants to be a member of NATO. Ukraine said it wanted to be a member of NATO, though they were not included into, or they were not incorporated into NATO, but the intent of these countries was to join NATO at some point in near future. And Russia always stated that it will never agree to Ukraine being a member of a NATO nation. And then something else happened in 2014. In 2014, there was an uprising in Ukraine, which had many elements of neo-Nazi, fascist, and right-wing personalities. And these people were supported by, you can say, covert or overt support provided from the United States administration. Even in the Western press, they accepted that there are elements of neo-Nazis and right-wing elements in these uprisings who are against Russia and Russian-speaking people within Ukraine. As a consequence of this uprising, the pro-Russian government, the pro-Russian, pro-Putin president of Ukraine at that time, Yanukovych, he had to flee Ukraine and take refuge in Russia. And the next government which came in place, which was replaced by this uprising, was pro-West and pro-US, pro-NATO. The president at the time, after the uprising, Mr. Poroshenko, he said that the stated goal of Ukraine is to become a member of NATO. United States clearly said it is Ukraine's choice. It is Ukraine's sovereign right to decide for itself whether it wants to be a member of X or Y or Z community. This clearly infuriated Russia, and Putin at the time, he annexed Crimea, which was very, very strategic for Russia. on the ground that Crimea has always been historically owned by Russia, and it was only gifted to Ukraine in around 1940s or 50s. So he has just merely taken back the control. Not only that, he also supported the separatist movement in the eastern part of Ukraine, which had Russian-speaking people, on the pretext that these people were being discriminated by the Ukrainian government. Their language was not given official status, and there were other forms of discrimination against Russian-speaking people, and that's why he was supporting the separatists. Soon after this annexation, there was a meeting between Ukraine, Russia, President of Ukraine and President of Russia in Minsk, which was mediated by Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, and Hollande, the President of France. And in those meetings, it was agreed that Russia would take away its military support from the eastern region. In return, Ukraine government would provide more autonomy to these eastern regions. Not only that, they would also undertake a free and fair election for the people of eastern region, give them more autonomy. But this agreement was never implemented. On paper they agreed, but in practice, both the sides claimed that the other side has renegated on the promises made. So this development was very critical for Russia, because all this was happening because of the support of United States to Ukraine. Not only that, around 2020, Ukraine again said that its stated goal is to become member of NATO, and it asked European Union to fast track its admission into NATO. That was the red line. And European Union or USA or NATO did not say that they are not going to make Ukraine member of NATO. They said that at some point they will make. So they never denied that at some point Ukraine will become a member of NATO. And when that will happen, clearly there will be NATO force standing right on border of Russia. Therefore, in 2022, actually in 2021, around November, December, Russian government, Putin, requested, or you can say demanded, to the Ukrainian government not to become member of NATO and give up that idea and be neutral. But for some reason, Ukraine refused. And in February of 2022, Putin attacked Ukraine on the ground that it's going to be member of NATO, it refuses to become neutral, and therefore it is a grave security threat for Russia. And I think there was a point in that argument that if Ukraine become member of NATO, it would become a security threat for Russia. It's very similar to what Russia was trying to do in Cuba in 60s when it brought its own missile on the border of United States. And at that time, we all know what happened. So it is a clear hypocrisy on part of the Western countries to do the same. And the point is, Russia is not that strong at the moment. I mean, it used to be adversary during the Cold War period, but right now, I don't think they are the real adversary of West is China. And that is stated by their own analysts and strategic thinkers, that the real threat is China, not just economically, but also militarily. And they should be channeling their energy to safeguard their position with respect to China, not Russia. Russia is what? A $2 trillion economy? And it used to be a superpower, but at this point, it's no longer that powerful. I mean, its military forces are big, but it's no match for NATO forces. So I don't know why these Western countries are so paranoid to safeguard their security with respect to Russia. Anyway, I forgot to mention one more thing. After the failure of Minsk agreement, Angela Merkel clearly stated that the stated goal of the Minsk agreement for them was to buy some time for Ukraine so that it can strengthen its military and become more successful economy. This is what I think was the last nail that drove Putin for this invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Now, what is happening currently? Clearly, when this war happened, Ukraine got a lot of aid from US, from NATO countries, and that the result of that is clearly visible. For the first year in 2022, it seemed for some time that Ukraine, if not defeat, then at least will be able to withhold the Russian forces. And that is what was happening on the ground. The Ukrainian forces were able to stop the advancement of Russian forces. But that was then. Now, last year USA said that they would support Ukraine as long as needed. Militarily, financially, strategically, whatever it needs to help Ukraine to win this war, they would help them as long as needed. But last month, they said, we will support Ukraine as long as they can. So there's a clear change in their stance. And now it seems the war between Ukraine and Russia has stalemated. Ukraine launched an offensive in the summer of 2023, but that has not resulted in any gain to Ukraine. In fact, Russia has strengthened its position so much that it seems unlikely that Ukraine will be able to wrest those regions which it has lost in the eastern Ukraine side. So, in a nutshell, what has happened to Ukraine? A clear devastation. Look at the geography of Ukraine. Look at their cities, their power stations. They have been bombed to they have been sent to a stone age. So much loss to human life. 7 million people have been moved below poverty line. 6 million people have become refugees, and 5 million people have been internally displaced. And all that in a country which has a population of 35 million. So like 15 to 20% people have been moved to below poverty line just in 1 year. Ukraine has lost 14 years worth of economic development. Now it needs to reconstruct all those buildings and infrastructure that it has lost because of the bombing by Russia. It needs around 410 to 420 billion dollar. The entire GDP of Ukraine is $200 billion, and it needs more than $400 billion. It's like more than 200%. So whatever Ukraine was generating, the entire value of its economic activity, all of that is wiped out. And what has happened to Russia? In spite of all the sanctions which was put by USA and Germany and France and other NATO allied countries, which they thought that will cripple the Russian economy, it doesn't seem to have any effect on their economy. In fact, the Russian economy is back to where it was before Russia attacked Ukraine, and that is very clear from this chart. Yes, Russia certainly has lost a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people, as claimed by the Western press, but so has Ukraine. So clearly, that sanction has not made any dent in the Russian war effort toward Ukraine. It may have impacted their economy, and it may have made the life of Russian citizens miserable, but in spite of that, Putin has become more stronger. So I think that sanction is a big failure. And you know what? There's even bigger failure for the Western policymakers and strategists. Because of this sanction, because of this war, they have forced Russia to go into the arms of China. The same country, same China, which is the bigger threat to the Western nations compared to Russia. And not just China. They have actually aligned Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran with Russia. And to top it, the global south, many of those countries are not even supporting Western countries. And what happened to the European Union itself? Countries like UK, Germany. Germany, which used to be the industrial powerhouse of West Europe, has suffered massively, just like Ukraine actually. Its chemical industry and auto sector, many of them are now considering shifting outside Germany because the gas has become so much expensive. Germany is now buying American LNG at 2 to 3 times the price that it used to pay for the Russian gas. Germany has cut itself off from the cheap Russian gas. Not just Germany, but many European countries, including United Kingdom, and the energy prices have jumped 2 to 3 times. It was already high before this war, but this war led to manifold jump in the gas prices. And because of this war, Russia has stopped supplying Germany those cheap gases. Industries are suffering massively. The economy is kind of stagnating now, and the industries are trying to relocate. And those which cannot relocate to the cheaper sources of energy, they are trying to shut down or at least stop their production. So who is the winner in all this? Clearly not Ukraine, not the European Union. It's actually very clear. It is United States, its military industrial complex, which is a clear winner. If you look at this chart, you will see that their stock prices has gained massive values ranging from 10% to 50%. So in the end, I would conclude by saying that if it was not USA, Ukraine would be in a much different situation as it is today. Only if it had used its own mind. Only if the people had agreed collectively that it can be aligned with the West, but it does not need to be militarily aligned with the West. Economically, yes. Militarily, no. So that's all for today. And as always, I'll be very eager to get your feedback and comments. Thank you very much for watching this.